Well, it's a big step forward for victims because what we want is accountability and justice. And why on earth would the royal family stand behind him when a judge has now ruled that all of his technical arguments trying to get the case thrown out were ridiculous and rejected, and he's got to go forward and he's got to answer to these charges. And I certainly believe, I think a lot of people believe that Virginia Giuffre is very credible. And it's just closing in. The walls are closing in on him. I think, frankly, this being stripped of his royal titles and so forth should have happened a long time ago, but at least it's happening now, and that's a good thing.
Well, I think the trigger for it, Lisa, was Lewis Kaplan's decision that the court would go ahead. And I have to compliment you, as usual. You got it exactly right. I must admit, I agree with you. I thought from his entire attitude throughout this saga, he was a no-nonsense legal guy who just said, let's have the case. Never mind about all these manoeuvres. Never mind about playing hide and seek behind palace walls so you don't get the papers served. Let's have the case. You deny it, let's have the case.
Yes.
Now, my next question to you is, will the case happen? Because surely now Prince Andrew will try to get out of it by paying her off out of court, won't he?
Well, 95% of civil cases, including high profile sexual assault cases, which is what I do end in a settlement. But it's hard to imagine what the settlement would be because you need two parties who are both willing to agree on something. I would imagine that Virginia Giuffre, who's now in the driver's seat, she's in a very strong position, would not settle for anything less than a full admission that he did what she's accusing him of, namely sexually abused her 3 times, and an apology and significant compensation. The money would probably be the easiest part. Getting him to admit this, he denies it. He says it didn't happen. I assume he's going to go to his grave and say it never happened. So how could there be a settlement? And also, Virginia settled in 2009 with Jeffrey Epstein. I think she's done with settling. I think she wants accountability. She wants justice. She wants a public trial in this case.
I agree with you, Lisa. I mean, a lot of people say she's only in it for the money, and I'm sure she's thinking about it. But I do think that this entire drama, if you like, has propelled her into a position where I'm just feeling that she has a sense of responsibility here to your clients, to her friends, to all women who have been abused by powerful men like this, allegedly, I should say, in terms of Prince Andrew, and that the money, because often with these deals, they take $5 million or something like that, and there's no admission of guilt. My feeling is, tell me what you think. I think she's really got him backed into a corner. He has no options. She has the perfect option. I want $10 million and I want a full apology and an admission which would incorporate an admission that you did this. Would you agree with me?
Absolutely. And listen, there's nothing wrong with victims wanting compensation. This is what I fight for every day, because being sexually abused derails your life. You don't have the career you were going to have. You don't have the mental health that you were going to have. You don't have the relationships and the sex lives that you would otherwise have had. Everything is on a completely different trajectory, and it's lifelong injuries. And so if somebody does that to someone and they have money, they should pay compensation to their victims. But this is always about so much more than that. It's about accountability. And if I were advising Virginia, and I don't represent her, she's very ably represented, but I would say, the only settlement is for him to admit what he did, to come clean publicly, and to apologize to her, and also to pay compensation. And I suspect that's what she would hold out for.
And if it does come to that, by the way, I would say that her attorney, David Boies, is a very impressive man. And he also has always maintained that this is about justice, not just money. So that is, I think, the direction of travel of this case. But Andrew would have to, under the circumstances, admit everything, because if it goes to court, if he chooses to do that, because if it goes to court, he'll be desperate to avoid a court case, won't he? Because if it does go to court, then the court will require all sorts of extremely private details from him, probably about his sex life in the past. They might even require a statement from Princess Beatrice, his daughter. Do you remember his story that he couldn't have been with Virginia Roberts in the Tramp nightclub because he took his daughter to Pizza Express in Woking? Right. All of these stories. So she might be called. And what the royal family have indicated today is they really do not want to be associated with any of this tawdry stuff, and right. his only way out of it is to pay her off and do what she says. Otherwise, there's a court case.
The message today is very clear. Prince Andrew, you're on your own. We're kicking you to the curb, as we say in the US. I don't know if you say that in the UK.
Sure, yeah.
But you're on your own, right? And you're right. There are other members of the royal family who will be called as what we call percipient witnesses. So were they there at the Pizza Express? Do they remember it? And we don't have to just rely on memories. I assume that there are records of where Prince Andrew went and what time and who was there and the security detail that went with him and who drove him and all of the things that would go along with that. And if he's lying about that, surely he does not want to enlist other family members to lie. If he's telling the truth, of course, it's still possible that you go to dinner with your family and then later you go to a nightclub. So it's really not most people don't take their little children to dinner at 11 p.m. or midnight when you would go to a nightclub, right? So yes, there's going to be during this discovery phase a lot of aggressive questioning by Virginia's attorneys, as they are entitled to do, indeed legally bound to do, of let's round up all of the witnesses, all of the documents, all of the staff and the people who worked for him to see if his story is correct or whether they can poke holes in it.
So in effect, we don't know what the Duke of York will decide. We don't know what his legal team will advise. But in effect, he's kind of run out of options, hasn't he? Because he now has basically two options. One is to pay her off and settle out of court and probably have to do exactly what she demands. And the other is to go to court. Now, if it went to court and he won the case, happy days. He's a free man and his reputation is restored. But my bet is he's not going to risk that, because if it goes to court and he loses, he's got stripped of a lot of his status today. If he loses that case, then he would no longer even be Prince Andrew, Duke of York. He would be Mr. Andrew York. So his disgrace would be even worse than it is today. So what do you think?
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, go on.
Can I add something to that? At trial, his attorneys are going to have to go on the attack against Virginia. They're going to try to undermine her. They're going to say, try to dig up dirt on her. I don't think that's going to go over well from a PR point of view. I think people have less and less stomach for that. And that's what they would have to do.
Yeah. And of course, what he's facing here, I must stress that he continues to deny these charges against him. But what he's facing, if it goes forward in the way that you and I have been discussing, is two options or two possibilities. One, he has to settle $10 million or something like that and admit that all this time he's been lying, that he did sexually assault her, or it goes to court and he loses the case and he's exposed as a liar. And the third option is, of course, he wins the case and he's not a liar. But I suspect the first two are the more likely outcomes. That's his future, isn't it? Pretty grim.
The choices are really grim. And I would assume that he's probably huddling with his legal team and discussing these various options. I hope they are giving it to him straight, the same way that you are describing it. The problem is that lawyers sometimes, they want their clients to like them. And so they'll give them a rosier picture. Oh, we'll win at trial. Let us stay in. His lawyers, defense lawyers, get paid by the hour. So they have motivation to stay in and not settle the case. And also I've seen sometimes a team around a high profile person. They're just yes men and yes women and telling them what they think they want to hear. So I don't know if he really has the reality check, but I would think that being stripped of his royal titles, that's probably a wake-up call to him today, if nothing else.
I mean, if his legal team do say, let's go to court, we've got a fair chance of winning this, I haven't seen anything in this saga that indicates they've got a fair chance of winning it. Again, it's just me talking, but from everything I've seen, if it goes to court, I wouldn't bet $1 on him winning that case, would you?
Well, I don't know yet. I don't want to place a bet on it yet because we don't know what the evidence is. So right now we're just at the stage where the evidence gathering begins. Okay. And both sides take depositions and get documents and do questions and answers under oath. And there's a lot that goes into this process. So I don't want to weigh in on chances at trial yet because we don't even know what the evidence is. I certainly do not think it looks good for Prince Andrew at this point, but we shall see.
Well, Her Majesty the Queen today issued an extraordinary, unique statement saying that Prince Andrew would fight or defend this case as a private citizen. But
Right.
I do think the strong message coming out of the palace is they don't want this to go to court. It could bring them all into it. I mean, what they tried to do today is distance themselves from Prince Andrew because he's already done enough damage to the royal family's reputation. And if it goes to court, it'll be even worse. So I do think that, well, would you tell me what you think? I think the most likely option is he'll settle out of court.
Okay, but we will see
What do you think,
what
Lisa?
does Virginia need for her to agree to that settlement, right? Is he really going to admit that he did this after he said he didn't? He doesn't even remember meeting her. I work on a lot of cases like this, and sometimes my clients really do want to settle. And so we try to find some middle ground. For Prince Andrew, perhaps, he was drinking a lot during those years. Is he going to say that maybe under the influence of alcohol, he did things he doesn't remember, which he
I
now
see. Yeah, yeah.
I
What
mean,
do you reckon, though, Lisa? Which option do you think is the most likely?
I think the case is going to go forward at least for several more months and at least till the eve of trial. I don't see a settlement coming shortly.
So you do think there's a fair chance it might go to trial?
I do, yes.
God, that would be astonishing.
I know. Can you imagine? I know.
Well,
And it will not be televised, but journalists can attend.
The journalist
So
in me is quite excited by that prospect. But
I'll get your plane ticket to New York, Kevin.
Get my notebook ready, indeed. Listen, can I just, before you go, thank you so much for your time. It's been great talking to you throughout this saga, and I hope we talk again. I'm sure we will, because as we quite rightly have observed, it's not over yet, not by a long chalk. Quick word about the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. These jurors coming forward and saying that they were sexually abused when they were underage, and this potentially undermines the jury's decision. Last time we spoke, you thought there was a prospect of a mistrial and another trial for her. Where are you standing on that now?
So I want to be very clear. If someone was a child sexual abuse victim, that does not prevent them from serving on a jury. That's fine. You can still be on a jury. Even in the jury room, you can talk about your personal experiences. That's very common. What you cannot do is lie on the juror questionnaire form, which asks you certain questions. And that's the issue now, that Ghislaine Maxwell's attorneys are saying that at least one juror lied. That I'm kind of reading between the lines because the documents are redacted, they're edited, but it seems to be that's what they're arguing. If he lied on that form, and if the others also lied on that form, and then it was material, it was important, because then in deliberations, they said, you know what, I was sexually abused too. It took me a long time to come forward. I didn't tell the whole story at first. It seems like it was material. She may then have grounds for a new trial. I mean, we will see because we don't have all of the facts now. But I'm somebody who tries these cases. I want sexual abuse victims on my juries. It doesn't make them biased any more than not being a victim makes somebody biased, because people who are not a victim buy into a lot of myths and false ideas about sexual abuse, like that you're going to immediately run to the police, which just doesn't happen, right? So we will see. We have briefing on that in a couple of weeks. If you're going to ask me to call it, I do think there's a good chance that she gets a new trial, unfortunately.
Oh dear, that's a shame. But let's go back before you go, Lisa. Thanks for your time tonight, as always. Prince Andrew, just to recap your prediction, because I trust you, because you seem to get everything exactly right every time. About 4 or 5 months of deliberations leading up to the case, potential settlement on the eve of the trial, but you think a fair chance it will go to trial, because if it goes to trial, that's going to be a sensation.
So, right. I think the judge was indicating a trial in the fall. I think that's very unlikely. I think that will get pushed back. I don't think we're going to have a trial in the fall. I think both sides will continue to litigate. If there is a settlement, I think it'll be months from now. I can't really predict. As Yogi Berra said, I don't like to make predictions, especially about the future. I can't predict that far out because I don't know what both sides are going to want to do. But I think we're going to continue to see this litigated for at least some time.
Lisa, fantastic to talk to you as always.